Hi everyone, welcome to the 4th episode of the MyMuddlings podcast. My name is Julianne and I'm recording on the 1st of September 2016, and it's a lovely semi-sunny day here in Adelaide where I live, and I'm really glad to be back with you today. And thank you to all the new people who are checking out my podcast. I really hope you enjoy it, and for those who are returning, I'm really glad that you're here. I've had some more really great feedback this week about the podcast, and that's really exciting. So let's get on with it. I thought I'd start just by telling you why I didn't podcast last week, because I am trying to do this weekly. The reason I didn't podcast last week is because my husband Simon had the week off from work, so that was really nice. We did a few day trips around. We went out for lunch a couple of different places. If you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen some photos of our pub lunches, and we went for a walk down at Henley Square along the Esplanade for a little bit. I took a photo of the beach when we were down there, and we also tripped up to the Adelaide Hills and we had lunch at the Harndorf Inn. The Harndorf is a little German sort of settlement town that's up there, and it's a really big tourist spot, and we went on a Thursday, so it wasn't too bad, and we had lunch and went for a bit of a walk up there, and that was pretty nice. We did some work in our garage because we have a garage absolutely full of stuff that I want to try and minimise and get rid of some of those things. So we spent some time out there. We had a birthday dinner on Saturday night, so it was just a pretty jam-packed week. I needed a holiday to get over Simon's holiday. So of course, with all of that tripping around and all that business, there was just no time for me to record and edit a podcast. But I'm here today, so let's get on with it. I've only got a little bit to talk about today. I haven't done a whole lot, but I'll start with what I've got off the needles. And just before I go any further, I do hit my legs quite a bit when I do this podcast. You might have noticed all the shaking in the last episode, and I'm going to try really hard not to do that because it does shake my phone. I don't have a decent tripod or anything for it to sit on, so it's just kind of tentatively sitting on a tin just in front of me. So I'm going to try not to do too much moving and slapping of my thighs, etc., because I'm sitting cross-legged here, just to try and minimize that shaking, but I do apologize if it does come up. But off the needles today, I have another pair of ankle socks. As I've spoken about before, I'm doing the Just One More knit along, and this August's prompt was for ankle socks. And I know I spoke about some last week, and these were the pink ones that I showed you, the Valmu socks. I thought I was going to be okay just having had these ones for the knit along. However, one of the criteria is, even though these are adult socks, they did not take me 50 grams of yarn, and the knit along specifies it has to be at least 50 grams of yarn, which to me is really frustrating because I don't wear ankle socks. So I was simply knitting these socks for the knit along. But these were only 44 grams, I think, off the top of my head. So, not 50 grams. So I've had to knit another pair, which, as I said, is very frustrating because I don't really wear ankle socks. And I've had to use stash that I was going to use for full-size socks for ankle socks. Anyway, Simon did say to me, well, why don't you just pull them apart and reuse the yarn? And that is true, I can do that. However, these are also being used for my box of socks Cal, which is from the Yarngasm podcast. So I need to at least keep them in sock form until January when that finishes. So I guess I'll think about it again in January and see how we go. I have been doing a lot of exercise lately, just trying to get a bit fitter. And I guess once it's a bit warmer, I'm not going to want to wear full-size socks when I'm working out. So these may get used, I don't know. But anyway, they were from last week. This week's are just some plain vanilla socks. These are also knit out of Knit Pick Stroll. This is the ash colourway, which is a nice grey. I am trying to use a lot more greys because it's probably one of my new favourite colours to wear. I don't really wear a lot of black, but grey's kind of my black. And these are just really, really simple. These are essentially just my vanilla sock recipe without the leg. I initially learnt to knit socks, and that's what I still use on Susan B. Anderson's How I Knit My Socks tutorial. I think it was on her blog. I don't think it was an actual pattern. I think it was just on her blog. And it's free, so I'm not going to be telling you anything that you can't find out on your own. So basically what I just do 12 rounds for the cuff, then I would knit my leg, which of course I've left out. I do 17 repeats of the slip stitch heel, so slip one, knit one to the end, and then purl backwards. I do 17 because I need just that extra bit of width across my instep. And then I just regular gusset decreases, and then just a regular decreased toe. So yes, I've had to make my second pair of ankle socks, which I done, so I'm still in the running for the knit along. So I guess that's a positive thing. Anyway, as for last episode, I spoke about my blue sand cardigan and hoping that I would get that finished for the show. Well, I changed my mind. And if you follow my blog, you would have seen that I started a flax light pullover, which is a pattern by Tin Can Knits. It's a free pattern. And I was hoping that I would get that done in time for the show, which is tomorrow, but it's not going to happen, unfortunately. I'll just grab it here because I've got it attached. I'm alternating skeins, so I have it attached to my yarn butlers here that my dad made for me. So this, here we go, that's probably better. So that's knit also out of Knit Pick Stroll. As you can tell, that's one of my favourite bases. And this is their tonal hand-dyed or hand-painted, I think they are, colourways. This is Shale. It's discontinued, which is really, really sad because I absolutely love this colour. I knit a shawl called the Ashlyn Shawl, and that's by Justina Lorkowska. And I knit that partially in this Shale colourway, and I really, really liked it. I also used Stroll Tonal in Inverness colourway for that one, which I also want to buy so that I can knit myself a sweater or a cardigan out of that colour too, because I really like that. So the flax is, as I said, it's fingering weight. It's Stroll, and it has this garter stitch sort of section that runs down the top of the arm. I finished the body on the Friday night, I think it was, and I decided in my infinite wisdom to do a what's it called, a tubular bind off, which now that I've done it and I look at it, I actually really, really like. But when I was in the black hole of kitcheneering an entire sweater's worth of stitches together, I was kind of regretting it. But it has actually ended really nice. I'm not sure if you can quite see that there. But it's nice and stretchy, and it just looks quite polished from the outside. So I'm actually really pleased that I did it, and I will do the same on the cuffs as well. However, I had the bright idea to do the tubular bind off long after I'd started the body of the sweater, so the top is just a regular long tail cast on. So this is really, really simple, a really simple pattern. It's a really enjoyable pattern when you do it in something like a hand painted yarn, because you just it's really nice to see the different effects that you get as the yarn spirals through. Initially I started this with just one ball, and as I got to the larger sort of stitch counts sort of across, once the increases were nearly to the point that they needed to be, I started to see some really bad pulling, and so I thought, nah, I'm not going to be happy with that. So I just ripped it out back to the bottom of the ribbing and then started alternating skeins from there. So it's fairly fairly broken up. There's not a lot of flashing and that sort of thing. The arms, actually, I am taking the time to alternate skeins on the arms, but I don't know whether it's really worth it because there's still quite a lot of, you can see the zigzagging through here of the colours. So I don't really know that it's worth it to do it on the sleeves, so I'm not sure if I'll do the second sleeve alternating as well. I might do, just to remain consistent. One of my balls is a little bit smaller, you can probably see, than the other, because one of them obviously, well, these are the second lot of balls that I've used, but the first ball was, the ribbing was all done on one ball, so there was a little bit extra on the second ball. So that's that one. Hopefully I will get that done fairly soon before the weather starts to heat up too much, but unfortunately no, it's not going to be ready for the show tomorrow, but that's okay. Next up, I'll talk about some spinning. I've done some spinning, and that'll probably be the last thing that I will tell you about today, because I don't have a lot, and so I'll just get on with it. As you probably are aware, if you've seen my first episode, I really like Kathy's fibres, and that's where I get the most of my spinning fibre from, because I really like her colourways, and she's got a really great price point, great quality, and she's South Australian. She's from the Adelaide Hills, so I like to support the local indies. So this work in progress that I have is some of Kathy's fibres, and this is her happy colourway. So that's the second half. I've spun up half of the braid. I started it last night, just doing a fractal 2-ply. So this is the half the skein, so that's going to be my second bobbin. So we've got some lovely pinky reds and burgundies and a little bit of splashes of purple with some yellows and oranges. So it is a very happy colourway. So I finished earlier today my first bobbin, and as I said, I'm fractally spinning this. So if I did speak about, when I spoke previously on the podcast about my red flowering gum, I spun that as a fractal, but at that point I split that half only in two, and I found that the colour changes weren't quite quick enough to sort of get a good blending through with the other half of the braid. So this time I split it in two, kept one half, and then split the other half in four. So you can probably see it looks a bit messy, and it's just because there's such short colour repeats in there. So when I spin up the other half, which I'm hoping to get done this afternoon and possibly even ply today, I know I'm supposed to rest, but I very rarely do. I only really rest if I'm going to be doing a Navajo ply. But yeah, so I'm hoping to get that done. I reckon it'll be really pretty. There's some really pretty colours in there. And I'm hoping that by splitting the second half into four, I'll get a lot more of the blending and get more of the quicker colour repeats through the longer colour repeats of the other half. So that's what's on my wheel at the moment, and I'm using my Ashford Traveller. I do have 4 wheels, so I may talk about some in a future podcast and put in some photos, but I'm just using an Ashford Traveller that I got quite cheaply off eBay. And it's a good wheel. I find it's really good. It spins quite fine, and it's pretty consistent actually. I know a lot of that's to do with my drafting, but I always find that the yarns that come off the Traveller are actually really consistent, and I quite enjoy using it. So that's what I'm using for this one. Anyway, if you follow me on Instagram, you'd have seen that I was doing some plying on the weekend. So I've got 2 new skeins of handspun. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is one that I actually dyed the fibre myself a little while ago, because my sister is currently pregnant again, and we don't know yet whether it's a boy or girl. We'll be finding out pretty soon. Anyway, so I said to her, if I was to make something, I didn't tell her that I was making this, which I will tell you. It's a blanket, and So I didn't tell her that I was going to make a blanket, but I said, what if I make something that's kind of like a housewarey wear type thing? What colour would you like? And she sort of listed off a few colours, and I thought, well, seeing we don't know whether it's a boy or girl, I know it's silly to, you know, only boys can have blue and only girls can have pink, but she said, oh, blue, purple, grey, so she sort of listed off a few colours, and so I went, okay, well, what about a sort of a purpley blue? I'll try and get a purpley blue. Unfortunately, this didn't come out quite as purple as I was hoping. It's a little bit purple in the video, actually. It's a little bit darker than what it actually is in real life, but I call it cornflower. It's kind of a cornflower blue in real life. And you can see there's just some subtle shifts because obviously I hand dyed the fibre, and it was just plain white merino fibre. So there's some nice shift in colour where it's obviously the dye has penetrated more in some areas and less in others. So it's come out, I reckon it will look really, really nice when it's all knit up. And I'm actually going to be knitting a dogwood blanket, which is also by Tin Can Knits, and I've purposely spun this as a not fairly loose, but a looser 2-ply, because it is a lace blanket, and you knit it in squares. I actually have one that I knit here. So this is the dogwood blanket square. So that's what I will be knitting out of this, and this is knit in a fingering weight. So you can see it's quite big compared to my head. This is fingering weight, and I will be knitting, this is approximately sort of a worsted, I'd say possibly even verging on Aran to thicker. So should be quite big, which is good. I'm just aiming for 4 squares. And you probably see this flapping around. I was looking for little tags to use on my hand spun. So you can see that there. Found these on Sarah's Texture Crafts. So just it's a little free downloadable. So I printed it out on some card, and I've been relabeling some of my more recent spins. So I got 193 yards out of 99 grams for this one. So it's about worsted, I think. So that's my 3rd skein of this. I have 100 grams left to go, I think, to make the 4th skein. So hopefully 1 skein will be sufficient to knit a blanket square. I may decide when I'm finished to do a bit of a border around the outside. I haven't decided yet, but that's my dogwood blanket spin. So the second one that I applied on the weekend was a bit problematic, to be honest. I was hoping to have a fairly tightly spun single, because I find when my singles are a little bit more loosely plied, or spun, they tend to bloom a lot, they fluff up a lot. I was trying to avoid that by maybe adding a bit more twist into my singles. So rather than doing 1 draft to treadle, which is what I generally do, and I think my ratio is approximately 9 to 1, I think, on my whirls. I did 2 treadles per draft. So I ended up with this single that turned out, because I wanted to actually Navajo ply this yarn, but I've ended up having to wind a plying ball. Oh my gosh, I can't get my words out. I had to end up winding a plying ball, which you probably saw on Instagram on the weekend. But I ended up getting a fairly nice yarn. If you look closely, you might see that there's some iffy bits where I got too many kinks in, and that I have found a couple of points where there's some curlicues that have been plied in, which is pretty unfortunate. But yeah, I mean, I really probably could have run the singles through my wheel again to loosen up the twist, but I didn't bother. But it's not too bad a yarn. It's lovely purples and blues. Again, it's looking a bit more purple on the screen than it really is. So I did alright. I did waste a little bit at the beginning when I was trying to do the Navajo ply. All of that I tried, it was turning out really ropey, and I was constantly being threatened with my my single ply snapping because it was so overspun, and then just trying to get that loop through to do the chain. I was really afraid that it was just going to snap, and the resulting yarn was ending up getting too overplied because it was taking too long for me to try and get that loop through, fighting all of it twisting back on itself. And that single actually even rested for probably a week at least, so it didn't really release much of its energy while resting, hence why I often don't rest my singles. But yeah, in the end it's okay. It should. I'm thinking about designing a shawl that I will knit with this. So you can see that there's some red purples and then some blue with the purple through there. So it's approximately a light fingering weight, and I got 256 yards out of 94 grams. So like I said, I did lose that first lot, so I don't have quite as much yardage as I would hope for, but it's still a pretty skein all in all, so I'm sure it'll knit up nicely. I can always hide the curlicues on the back of my yarn, back of my work, so that's alright. It's quite pretty. I'm fairly happy with that. So that's pretty much all I've got for today. Thank you very much for hanging around. I haven't done any dyeing in the last week. However, if you did like any of the skeins that I spoke about in the last podcast, I've actually listed them all apart from that one that I said that I wanted to keep on my Etsy store. So if you are interested in any of those, please check over there. They're all up for grabs at the moment. None of them have been sold yet. So yeah, I had an interesting time earlier in the week trying to name all of the colorways. One of them I'm a bit iffy on, but on the whole I was quite happy with them. And I've made up yarn bands to go on them, so that's pretty exciting. I just need to sell them now so I can buy some more blank yarn to dye some more. I do still have some in stock, but I'm hoping it'll be a self-sufficient kind of hobby / business with the yarn dyeing. So yeah, please do go over there and check that out, and that's at www.mymuddlings.etsy.com. Show notes for the podcast can be found at mymuddlingspodcast.wordpress.com. I have a Facebook page. Just search My Muddlings and you'll find it there. And as I said earlier, I have a message board and a group on Ravelry. Just search My Muddlings. What else is there? Instagram is Anne of Julie, so ANNEOFJULIE, and that is also my Ravelry username. So I think that's all of the housekeeping little bits and pieces. They'll also be at the end of the podcast. But thanks so much for sitting and spending some time with me today, and happy crafting. I'll see you hopefully next week. Bye.